get bullet points, then we just lightly edit.
Fantastic. Okay. Great, Brent. So take it away. Our goal in this recording is to document how to set up the development environment for building blocks. Brent and Ari are the original designers of this WordPress application. And Rodrigo, Ryan, and Dan are all leading the charge now to keep our Build It Blocks application current. Okay, Brent.
All right. So what I did while John was giving that overview is I began making a Google slideshow to pretend I came prepared. All right. So to explain WordPress in the simplest way to think of, there's three things that we should pay attention to. There's files, there's the database, and then there's the server environment. The server environment is going to consist, like the two biggest things that matter are which PHP version and what MySQL version are being used. Ideally, it's good to know what operating system and all that kind of stuff. If it's Apache, Nginx, whatever, because that will help you minimize troubleshooting if you run into an error. But I've moved platform to platform before, and really, if you are on the right PHP version and the right MySQL database version, it usually works fine. I think they use good practices. So I know like Linux, uppercase, lowercase matters, and so on. I'm pretty sure they architected their backend well enough that it handles all that for us, which is why off the shelf sometimes works wonderful. Less to think about, right?
Great.
Database is going to be where everything is stored. Um, Whenever you have uploads or anything like that, like files, images, videos, you update a theme or add a plugin for a new feature, those files alone do nothing. The database kind of connects the dots. It creates the URL paths. It tells the platform everything. So if you lose your database, I would argue the database is probably the most important thing to not lose, because you can always trial and error and figure out what PHP and MySQL version from your database. Though it will be painful, you can probably figure out what plugins are active and what themes you need to download. Lose this, you lost all the work, is how I look at it. So that guy matters the most. And then files, I drew a bunch of bubbles around it because I want to break it down to a few pieces, just so you guys understand how WordPress works in the back end. We are going to have plugins, which are functionalities. And I think we went through this before when we set up builder blocks, but it's good to recap. And I liken this to a car. Plugins will be functions. Themes is kind of like how it looks. And the core files is almost like the engine that runs WordPress. And then the uploads folder is anything you actually upload through the backend, through the dashboard. That's not a plugin or a theme. That might be PDFs, that could be videos, that could be images, and so on. Now, to give the car analogy I like to give with this is the framework is kind of like the bare bones chassis with like the engine, right? So you have like the core of WordPress running. You have no body kit on your car, no outer skeleton of the car. It's just bare bones it drives. Plugins, you don't have any plugins yet, right? So there's no radio, no seat warmers, and so on. Car runs, functions as it's supposed to. That's what the core files. Then you add a theme. That's like the outside of the car. How do you want your site to look? And then from there, you have plugins, which is like, what functions do you want? Do you need like a cool radio? Do you need a GPS? Like all the bells and whistles that kind of make the car unique. Because if you strip any car down to the wheels, the chassis, and the engine, besides how fast they go and how quickly they break, they're pretty much the same thing, right? You build it up and then you make it unique. That's what these guys are. And I guess uploads would be like what you throw in your car, like your luggage or something. I really haven't thought that far ahead with that analogy.
Well, this is great.
So
Great, Brent. Keep going.
thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna kind of just live edit this, and then we can maybe make this into something more presentable later. Let me drop in a text box. So for tools, in Access, let's start with Access. Once WordPress is installed, you don't really need too much to get in there. Let's see. So you need the login URL, which would be on your server. So you just go to the yoursite.com. And usually it's /WP-admin. Some people will change that for security reasons and stuff. We can look at that later, but it would be something like that. Then you get presented with, hey, give us your username or email and password. So then you just need, credentials or a user account.
So, Brent, can we be more specific here, or can you tell us where we go to get specific URLs?
Yes.
Great.
Yes. So basically the Build It Blocks website, let's go there. WordPress.com. I think it's /BIB, but let's see. This
Cool. It's what was the bottom one there?
oops,
Yeah,
thank
you
you.
got it. Great, great, great.
Wait, this is the older one. I think I missed 2021.
Yeah, that's it.
There we go. Thank you. Okay. So with that, what we're gonna want to go to is, let's do a sub bullet, and it should be WP-admin. I believe that would be it, and we can double check. Yes. And if my memory serves me right, it should be BIY support.
Wow, how do you remember this?
And robot sushi one.
Yes. Well, to be honest, if I ever had a hacky John, I'd start with this.
Yeah,
Because I know we use that across
there are
everything.
no secret, no secrets at Build It Yourself.
Yeah. It makes it easy though. Makes it easy to remember.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're in the back end. So that's one side of this, right? So that's access. Keep
Can we
forgetting I'm in
put
the
that in the
same.
documentation, Brent? It's biysupport@gmail.com and robot sushi one or $ robot sushi one. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, please chime in, and Dan and Brent and Ryan, if you have any questions. Imagine that you want to set up this development environment. So now's the time to ask Brent questions. Great. Perfect, Brent.
Yeah. And I don't know exactly your guys' path in life, but I'll tell you, knowing how to make a WordPress website, you can definitely do that as a side hustle and make some money if you ever need to. It's a very good skill, and it's lots of businesses use WordPress these days, and tons of roles for WordPress developer. Now, if you want to be a game designer or something, maybe you don't need that. But even if you want to market your own game and not have to pay somebody to make your site, so there's tons of benefits to learning this. Let's see. So from here, this is let me see, site access, right? Files, we're gonna need to have an FTP, so like FileZilla.
Mhm.
All right, and then with that, we'll need so here's to hoping the wiki has this. Okay, we're gonna check the wiki for that after. But basically, from this diagram, right, the access that we talked about first is just using the site, add in content. Let's actually add a note. So that's the site, right? This is gonna be,
Source files.
yeah. And then the other component is the database, right?
Yeah.
So let's make a note for that one.
It's so logical the way you think this through, Brent.
Thanks.
Guys, this is a model of how you document professionally.
I'll tell you guys this just to always reinforce it. My least favorite thing was doing documentation, but everywhere I go, they keep making me do it no matter what I'm doing. Whether it's freelancing and a client's like, how do I get into my site? How do I edit something? Build it yourself. The agency I work at, friends I have that do other jobs are always talking about different platforms and systems they use internally. If you're doing anything worth doing, you probably have to document and deal with like some sort of project management tool. If you're doing something small just to skirt by life, you'll never need to see one, but you kind of get what you put in, right? So this very critical skill.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. It's like someone telling you to floss. You're like, I don't really feel like flossing, but just do it. You'll find out later that you should have. All right. So from here, let's see. Let's add in some bullets. Okay, so this one's a little bit weird. At Build It Yourself, we're very transparent, like John said, like the password. So we'll just log in directly to the web hosting company and then just click over to like the MySQL tool and then click auto login from there. But if you were working with people, hypothetically, that you don't know well enough and you have something you are scared of losing and you only want to give them limited access, you are able to give them a specific URL with specific user credentials to access MySQL for a single database, right? They don't need your server login. They just need that one piece of access, right? So even from technically, we don't even need FileZilla. We can access this via the web hosting as well. But if you guys have ever done web hosting, file management, it's like one folder at a time, or like it's very painful. Whereas in FTP, you just drag and drop and you back up all the files with like 3 clicks. So that's the reason, not because of a trust thing, is because of its functionality. This one, because of trust, we can just not have to worry about extra URLs because from this server access, we can get FTP credentials if we ever need to change them. So I think it's more logical for internal people to know that. That's not always going to be the case. So I just wanted to call that out in terms of permissions and stuff. So I have to look in the wiki, but I think, man, it's been a while. So I'm just going to put web host, lease web, right?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. I had to let the engine start in my brain for a minute there. Lease
I'm
web.
amazed that you're remembering.
And then all right, so basically we'll need to document the URL for lease web for logging in.
Mhm.
We'll need to put in the username, password, and we need the path to actually get to the MySQL database.
Great.
So what we want to do first before we do anything major, our goal is to back up the documentation, right? First, access and tools.
Yeah.
So now we know the tools. We generally know what we need for access. Everything should be in the wiki. So we'll go there and we'll check there first. And we understand the structure of WordPress before we execute anything in our plan. And as a general practice moving forwards, I think we should make it a point to back up the source files periodically, but back up the database more aggressively. And maybe I can lean on you guys and challenge one of you to come up with a way to automate that in the near future. Servers have a thing called cron jobs, which are you can run a script automatically. So if we can find a script to dump a database as like a SQL file and just leave it on the server somewhere, that's doable. I know that's definitely potential, and there might be other mechanisms to do that.
Great.
And a rudimentary way would be to set up an automatic email that you email all team members like once a week. Hey, did you back up the database? Just as a reminder. So those are 2 layers of protection as we go forwards.
Great.
All right, so let's check the wiki now, right, and see what we can figure out. And actually, I'll show you here updates, right? So we're on WordPress version. Let's see. I think it said on the dashboard, and I kind of skipped past it. Okay, PHP update required. So we're on a more vulnerable version of PHP right now. We can't upgrade PHP without breaking the site until we do other updates to make sure everything's on the latest. Let's see. I'm totally missing. Wait, where it is? WP 5.5 plus. So I think we're on 5 point something is my guess. But if we look at updates, we're gonna see most things have updates. The theme has updates, WordPress has a new version, and several of the plugins have updates. So best practice, back up your stuff, have a rollback point, run updates, document which things you do as you update. So if I do the theme, like if I do WordPress first, right? I know there's only a single thing and there's only a single theme. So that's not that bad to remember. If it was a bigger project, it's still a good habit to like just in Excel or a notepad say, okay, first I did WordPress, I updated it, check the site. Is it broken or is it working? If it broke, what things broke? Are they critical or are they minor, like aesthetic? If it's just like the menu looks funny, you fix that later with CSS. If you get like an error page, you roll back and go, uh-oh. So you kind of want to understand, it's like any experiment. What did I change? What was the outcome? Measure it. From there, let's say you did get an error and you're going to roll back. You could try updating the plugins first, just in case one of the plugins is breaking compatibility with a new version of WordPress. After this initial update, if we do this regularly, like, even monthly, we'll never get to a point where we're blowing up the site. I'm more concerned because it's been a while since we've done this. Astra and WordPress are very well maintained. I know MetaSlide is well maintained. WP import, we probably don't even need anymore. I think we did that to bulk import some stuff at one point. Responsive carousel. Let's see. So we have that one. So we have that's for the posts themselves. The only one in this list that I'm concerned about is this guy. To be honest, I don't use that one aggressively. I did use this aggressively. This one doesn't matter as much because Google doesn't care about AMP. This just makes the site a little bit faster, and we're not worried about those milliseconds at this point. All right, so let's move forwards. Let's go to the wiki. Let's see. bill-yourself.com. Is it just /wiki? I remember.
Yes.
Login. I'm gonna try BIY support robot sushi one. Anyone know if that's right?
Let me check.
Nope. It was worth a shot. I'm not sure if it was at Gmail, and I know we've changed that a few times.
Okay, hold on a second. Control F, wiki. It's UID is BIY support. And the password is robot sushi 1.
That's not promising. No,
That
that was
didn't
my
work.
first try. I just double checked and I don't have caps lock on.
And that didn't work?
It did not.
BIY support. All right, let me see.
I can do a forgot password and see if we can trigger
No,
that.
hold on a second. Let me go to, sorry guys.
I have filler content, don't worry. So with WordPress, I actually want to show you guys something I'm working on. This is kind of cool. So on the side of work, I was thinking about trying to make some marketing workshops. Basically find people who want to do what I do, for either to sell it or just internally, for their business. And I started making this in WordPress. And the cool thing with this is WordPress now has what's called the full theme editing. So when we first made the Build It block site, it was much simpler, like WordPress, the core. But now the core of WordPress itself lets you go to edit site and you can literally bake out a page for every single part of your site. So the reason I show you this is that in the future, I envision us going through Build It blocks and maybe making it more native and ripping away things that are extra. But that's also a bigger lift than we need to deal with right now. But if we look over here, blog home, like we see template parts, all archives, a homepage for a blog. The index is the homepage, a page, with sidebar, with no title, with image. So these come pre-built with the theme that WordPress gives you, but you can go into anything, right? I can click the 404 page. Here's how the 404 page looks right now. I can add I can click into it, and with the block builder that we were using for builder blocks, you can go in, you can add in like a gallery, other parts, there's patterns, there's blocks, media, and I can just pull some of these things. And they also added what's called the query builder, or let me make sure I'm not messing up the name, query loop. So the plugin we use for the post carousel, you can actually query with a block now versus an additional plugin, which is one less thing to maintain, one less thing that can go wrong. And you can just take this and then you just add a little bit of JavaScript to make it, a carousel, right? So if you want to bring in 9 and only show 3 at once, you bring in all 9, you go to Chat GTP and say, hey, here's my source code. I need to only show 3 at once and add arrows on each side using pure JavaScript. You get that? You just drop in like a reusable block for JavaScript somewhere, all within native WordPress, and now you have your carousel without dealing with additional plugins. So when I look at the plugin list, it's really not that bad. I think we followed a good practice where we said we don't want too much. But there's still some that we could delete that we're not using right here, right? These aren't in use, so those should be deleted. There's a new version of AMP, but it doesn't work with PHP. That might get fixed. But I think this just optimized some code for AMP. That's something we could probably get rid of at this point. Meta slider, we're going to leverage for the videos right now. But ultimately, we could also make a post type called gallery, and then we can associate post with a parent. Like, so in the future, we can really strip away this plugin, these we can already delete. We don't need this one. We can get down to just the duplicate post plugin and maybe the importer if we need to bulk import, and just delete them when we're not using them. And then we have no plugins because WordPress core has expanded and got so much better. And the less code you have to maintain and the less pieces, the lower the complexity of your project, the less room for error and for things to break. So John, that was my filler content.
Thank you. Thank
Let me
you.
know if you need
Perfect.
more.
Yeah, it's great. So I just put in the chat box, try this.
Perfect.
I'm not sure, this doesn't, it seems strange, but it's 13 characters in the password.
It worked.
Okay.
All right. It must have been something where we had like a password. Maybe it's when we had that site issue where something, you had some guy come in and fix something. And
Yeah. I think, yeah, whatever.
it's there. That's all we need.
Yeah.
All right. So now we go to passwords. And also, okay, so here's another tip for you guys with the way the world is changing with AI. If I want this to document something specifically and we're internal where it's not awkward, like a presentation to an investor, I can say, hey, Chat GTP, as you're listening to this transcript, these next parts are extremely important. I want this section to be documented as how to access our web server. All right, the first step is to go to buildityourself.com/wiki. The login is BIY support for the username, and the password is $robotsushi1 with a capital R, capital S, and the 1 is numeric. So we want to go into our wiki. Once we log in, we're on the main page. Second step is to click passwords. From there, we're brought to the passwords page. The third step is to use the table of contents to find the lease web hosting. Currently, that is section 1.6, and we click it. We'll scroll down the page. Now, the next step is to log in. We're going to click the login URL. Then we're going to copy and paste the email and the password. If you get an error message saying it can't find the login page, there'll be a link that says looking for the customer portal. Click that and it will redirect you. Hey, John,
Yeah.
the password didn't work on that one. Lease web.
Okay. Okay. Um, Let me go back and find the password. Lease web.
Chat GTP. We're looking for the password, so hold on for the next step. All right, so you guys see how that works, right? Like the more context you give in your transcription. So if you're trying to document something, you can record yourself, or just use Google Docs and hit like dictate, microphone, speech to text, whatever they call it. And then you just give very clear signals to the AI, and then it will extract stuff better. AI is like a child, you know. If you tell it it's bedtime soon, it will never get ready. If you say it's bedtime now, they might start to get ready. So you just need to give more structure to what you're saying and more clarity, and the better it will output. And that also forces you to think better. All right, I'm gonna try. I see in the chat.
Try that. I'm not sure. Robot power too.
Looks like it's working.
So
We are in.
guys, you can tell how difficult it is and how important it is to keep documentation. Brent put a huge number of hours into creating this wiki, but I haven't kept it updated as I should have. I just keep my passwords locally, which is absolutely the wrong thing to do.
At work, and I think at Build It Yourself, when I was like doing more with the operations, and then at the agency, one of the goals, one of the questions that I'm often seeing like any C-level kind of person, and I know John will kind of be like, I know you are more humble, but you're a CEO, Build It Yourself, right? The owner of Market Vantage too, right? The goal is always, how do we scale? How do we put in infrastructure that will enable teams to work together, communicate, and do things in the most efficient manner, in a repeatable manner? Because businesses succeed when you can replicate your success, and when you have a formula that's different than other people's, that's better. And then if you can replicate those results, and then you have something that you can grow, right? For every 10 workshop leaders, we need one manager to manage them or something. Like you have some numbers that scale with that. You're in a position to take people's money and make more money. So documentation goes along with that philosophy of trying to scale your business up. All right. So from here, actually, I'm going to talk to Chat GTP. All right. So I'm going to drop this in the transcription. All right. We got the password. That was the last step to gain access. So that part, we're going to move on to another part for documentation, Chat GTP. This next section is how to access MySQL databases via the server dashboard.
Brent, before you get to the next section,
Yeah.
can we just go around the horn here? Dan, do you find this interesting and useful?
Yeah. I got a little bit lost. I will need to watch like the recording, but yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty important for all of us to know like the basics.
Rodrigo, any questions? Do you understand the importance of documentation? And
Yeah, actually, I recently lost some important code because I didn't document, so
great.
I understand.
Okay. Ryan and Ari, I assume you're on board. Any questions before we go to the next step?
Oh, we're good.
Okay. All right.
Yep, all good.
Thank you.
I have one question before we go on. Dan, I know you said you got a little lost. Out of curiosity, is there any specific part or parts that weren't clear? But I could always follow up with you later too.
Oh, it's more like all the pages you logged into.
Understood.
It's like there are a lot of pages, so it was like pretty much that.
Okay, perfect. That's not so bad. So I just wanted to make sure we didn't go too fast there.
No worries.
The theory is good. It's just the
Yeah. And
Password.
the output from this meeting is going to be that PowerPoint. We'll have all the steps, and then we'll use the transcript to document. So
Great.
I don't even think you'll have to watch the video. If we do documentation the right way, you should be able to read through a single page on the wiki, and
Great.
this whole thing, the essence of it should be in there after.
Great. Thank you, Brent.
Just have to keep talking about the documentation. I never understood why you did that when I was younger, but now that I'm on this side of it, it's needed. All right, so I'm gonna be weird and flag the chat GTP again. But the more of those little markers you do in your transcript, it would be helpful. Now I'm exaggerating a little bit, right, to kind of emphasize to you guys how you can leverage AI for that. But ultimately, you can just say, okay, this section we need to document. This is section 2. This is how we are going to access the MySQL database. That sounds a lot more normal when you're talking to people, and you can still do that, and it will be enough context. All right, so it's somewhere in here. Let's see, it's been a while and they changed stuff. My product's dedicated server. Compute dedicated.
I'm sorry, Brent. How are you using ChatGPT?
Okay, so here's the logic, right? Because we're going to do documentation.
Right.
I asked you to record because I'm going to take the recording, and I have this tool called Descript.
Yeah.
And what Descript does is it allows me, I'll show you guys this real quick. I'm going to be upgrading soon anyways, so ignore my time limit on here. But what I do is I just take a video of me, right? Anything, and I just drop it in. So I'll go to like new file. Let's see. New, here it is. So I'll do like new audio, right? Now, normally I can just drag and drop a video if it's from a meeting. But if I'm going to dictate, I can use this tool, or I can use Google Docs for free. Just do speech to text.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll do something like this.
And it'll transcribe the video?
Yes.
Wow. And summarize it, or wow.
Yeah, so as an example, this is going to be a procedure on how to document documents. Step 1 is to open your lunchbox and take out 3 apples. That is it. Okay, so that's a really short process, right? So now it's going to analyze the audio. And once that's completed, I can just copy and paste. Now, I use this tool specifically for more complex things like meetings, because you're going to have multiple speakers. It can actually detect multiple speakers, and you can label the voices, which is really cool. Okay, so this is going to be a procedure on how to document documents. Okay, so I take this, right? I can go to Chat GTP, right? I like 3.5 better than 4. I get the plus version, and I find that it's lazy. It's way too human. You need to really drive incentive with it. 3.5 is more like a robot and does what I tell it. I kind of like that better. If I don't want to have to convince emotionally that my AI needs to work. All right, so I'll say, here is a meeting transcript for a process. Can you write the documentation?
Ari, are they teaching you in school how to use tools to program? How to use AI tools to program?
Actually, in one of my classes last summer, we had an assignment that was using ChatGPT to code a thing, like a simple application, just so that we could have like some experience using it and see like where it gets like complicated when trying to use it to build like bigger things. And like tested its limits. But we did get like one assignment on that.
And were you impressed with how good or how bad it was?
Well, it's pretty good for small stuff, but if you try to build like a bigger program on a single session, which was what they wanted us to do, it started like misremembering stuff from earlier, or at least on the free version it did that.
Got it. Well, this is ChatGPT for documentation, so great. Sorry for interrupting, Brent.
No, that's a great question, and I've had the same experience. So my son, I'm trying to make him learn everything I think he'll need to know to have like, you know, success in the future, and AI is part of that. So I've already like had them. We created a game in Python, and I don't do Python coding, but ChatGPT does, and we made like a user interface for some text game. And what we found was the exact same thing. You ask it for something, it can give you code, but the larger the request and the more you try to have it understand the context previously, it gets confused. Um, Even at work for search engine optimization, I'll ask it for suggestions for different web pages, right? I'll feed it URLs, titles, and some context. And I tell it very specifically, like, here's some keywords, here are some URLs. I need a suggested title. Like, let's say we're going to make like 100 blog posts for somebody. I'm trying to come up with title, URL, the heading, and all that kind of stuff, the top level items, not the actual content, just the idea, right? And the meta info. And it will do great. I like, hey, output it in a CSV format. I need these columns. After I run that and I keep giving it new keywords and URLs, right? Doing it in batches so it doesn't overload. By like the third or fourth request, it starts like giving me paragraphs again. And I have to go back and say, hey, what's wrong with you? Are you paying attention? Go back and read. Like, I asked you for this. And then it goes back and it's like, oh, I apologize. And then it starts doing it correct. And then it loses context later. And it's fascinating. It's really weird, but you know.
Surely it will get better and better and better. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. My suggestion to you guys is don't use it for anything automated. Like, really make sure you're looking at the results, and just like, for instance, I gave it my transcript. It took the liberty to assume I was joking. But what if I really need apples to document documents, right? Granted, it understood this was funny, but what if it wasn't funny? That's something I would need to delete and modify. And then it starts talking about imaginary apples. Now, the reason it did this was I only gave it one sentence, right? Or two sentences. It tried to expand because it doesn't have enough info to write. Like, that's more concise than what a documentation would be. So this is a poor example. But if we gave it like a, 1 hour transcript, it should be able to do amazing things with that. And the more context in your prompt, like I only said, please adapt this document, adapt this. That's not very helpful for it either, right? Yeah. So bottom line,
I read about a job that paid $350,000 for a prompt engineer, and the prompt engineer did not even have an engineering degree. I think they had a psychology degree. So just an example of how valuable people who know how to ask good questions are. $350,000 a year job for asking AI questions.
man. Yeah, it's a new world where college matters, but also the skills and examples you can show of your work. I mean, it's another reason why documenting is good, right? If you're used to documenting, you'll have wonderful case studies and projects. You go to any big website, like really to drive this, like two of the clients we work with at Market Vantage, and there's lots of people who do this, I've noticed, and I really learned this. All right, so this is a software, like a scheduling software for like fitness and wellness companies. And if you go to the About section, you're gonna find, where is it? There's case study resources. Let me see, client stories, right? Camunda, they do like decision making and stuff. Like it's like a business decision making kind of thing, business process management. They do flow charts, and you can run like the actual flow chart with data, input, output junk. If you go here, and I think somewhere in here, there's case studies. And the benefit of this, now, if you look at these kind of sites and think about your personal portfolio website, and you think, you could have a project where you say, I made a personal website, and show some screenshots. But what John's really trying to instill in you, build it yourself philosophy, is what these large companies do. So if I click on any of these, I don't even have to look to know. They're going to say, what was the goal? What was the problem? How did the software help overcome that problem? Right? A little backstory. And they have a whole write-up about it. And the reason they do that, increased agility, right? An open architecture that increased agility. They got to market faster, and they had greater operational efficiency. So they kept the key points up top if you want to dig in deep. So any project you have, if you have like, I don't know, like 5 projects you list on a projects page on your personal site, I'd really recommend that you build out an individual page for each while it's fresher in your mind. Explain the whole goal, like how your PowerPoint is structured, right? Problem, mission. Here's my issue. That was the challenge. This is how we overcame it. This is why this solution worked. You tell a company that, they're gonna love you. If you just tell them, it's like mental math versus explaining your work. If you can explain your work, they trust you to replicate your logic. If you don't have logic, they think you're lucky. John, is that a fair?
The process is often more important than the end result.
Yeah.
Yeah, very well put.
All
Okay,
right, so
Brent, just to keep this, we have another meeting coming up at noon. I hope it's okay if we can finish this off next week.
yeah.
Okay, where to just get to a break point in the next 5 minutes or so?
Definitely. So my question I'm asking myself is, where do I find the actual MySQL? Maybe there's a search bar on the homepage. So I haven't been in here in a long time, and they moved things. I'm guessing maybe hosting, and maybe we can go into our hosting account this way. Let's see. We're able to complete the action. It's active. That's not promising. Okay. My favorite thing on a website, especially when I'm looking for account info, is when I see giant red text that says issues. That's sarcasm, by the way, in case the AI picks that up wrong. Let's see. I don't know if let's check the passwords and see if there's a better login section. Okay, so that's lease web hosting. Okay, so we went to lease web hosting here, December 2021. Plesk panel. So let's try the Plesk panel. So I think we have Windows hosting, and Plesk I think is equivalent to cPanel on Linux, if I'm not mistaken. So my guess is that maybe this login is more of the billing kind of information and like product level. This one might be the actual meat of what we're looking for. So we'll find that out right now. I'm hoping that works. All right. Okay, so that didn't work. I'm gonna just double check I have no spaces or anything. John, would you check to see if you have a Plesk panel for lease web login?
Oh, I think we can.
And that might be a good point to cut anyways, because
Yeah.
once we get in there, we can access the MySQL.
Yeah.
And that's where you can update oh, it worked this time. Okay, so that documentation is right. So let me copy this, right? That was this here. So we'll put this here. FTP, we got to double check, but that's here. And we'll make this prettier before we send it to you guys. And site access is correct. Okay, so we have the overview, we have the logins, and let's see, I'll close out this one. So what we would need to do, they have databases right there. You can just literally dump the whole SQL database, but we have a lot of databases. So I think next week what I'll show you guys is inside of the WordPress installation files that we access via FTP, there's a configuration file that specifies which database. We'll use that and document which one that is. We'll come back in here because there's a few different block ones, and we'll figure out which one we're supposed to back up. We'll download that. We'll back up the files at the same time for files to load. I might even do this pre-workshop and then just show you, because realistically at that point, we're just waiting for files to transfer, which is silly doing a workshop.
Thank you, Brent.
Yeah, like we'll do that. And then we can do the updates and stuff. I'm trying to think do you guys think it would be beneficial to see me troubleshoot if there's any issues, or is it better if I just run this stuff? Like I could probably do this like the hour before 11 next week and then just record it or something? I mean, what's better?
Good question. I mean, guys, we want to, the goal is we want to put you in a position to keep our documentation current. And Ari, we want to put you in a position to start making coding changes. So is it helpful for you to watch Brent troubleshoot rather than you burn the extra hour, Brent, on doing it yourself? I recommend we just watch you. I think we can learn a lot from watching you troubleshoot, unless you guys, have a different interest. Okay, let's do that. Let's meet at 11 o'clock next week, Brent, and we'll watch you upload and back up and troubleshoot.
Yeah, I'm hopeful it's quick. Honestly, after you see it once, I think you guys will be in a good position, because it's really just like if things break, it's just how do you re-upload the MySQL database? You guys might already know that from other things you might have done. Now, the cool thing about that is that extends beyond WordPress. Any MySQL database project you work on, it would be the same kind of philosophy of backing up and updating if you're rolling back. So you can, apply that to any project, MySQL.
Okay.
Right. So I know you guys it's about 12. So
thanks, Brent. That was great. Really, really perfect.
Thank you, Brent.
Thanks,
You're welcome.
and Rodrigo, Ari, Ryan. Ari, if you could stay on, we're about to start the IU meeting.
Yeah. Thank you, Brent, for the
Yes.
explanation.
Yeah.
Oh, and don't forget to stop and restart the recording.
Yeah. Thank you.